Well, good morning, Movement. It is so great to see all your shining faces this morning. I hope you guys enjoyed your 4th of July weekend, all of the loud and crazy and fun, exciting things that happened. If we have not had the chance to meet, my name is Whitney. I would love to meet you. After service, I will be out in the lobby. If we have met before, feel free to reintroduce yourself. I'm really bad with names. So if you repeat your name for the 20th time, I would very much be grateful for that. But a big thing that I wanted to start off the service with today is a huge thank you. And that thank you goes out to everyone who volunteered or was voluntold to help with the block party yesterday. We are so grateful for everyone that came out to make that event happen. We are also so grateful for those of you who attended, for those of you who invited other people to attend, or maybe those of you who were just attending and then randomly told people to come inside and enjoy what we had to offer. We considered it a huge success yesterday, and we do plan on it being an annual event that we take advantage of the fact that we have people literally walking right by our church for that parade. So look out for that next year. But ultimately, just wanted to say a huge thank you because that event would not have been possible without you guys. This morning, if you are new here and or if you are not new here, we have something called our Your Move card, which should be in the seat back in front of you. This is, for those of you who are new, this is a great way for you to get connected. If you could fill that out, put some of your contact information on there. We promise we will not spam your emails or anything like that. It's just our way of knowing that you would like someone to reach out so you can learn more about us. For those of you who are interested, the Your Move card is also exactly what it sounds like, which is for you to pick your next move. So whether that's something where you are looking for prayer over something that's going on in your life or someone else's life, if you are looking for a way to get connected here at Movement, maybe you're just kind of wanting to figure out what Movement is all about and how that relates to you, that's what that Your Move card is for. So you can fill that out. We have a box at the back of the auditorium as well as in our lobby that you can drop those in, and someone will be in contact with you to make sure that we understand what you're seeking and what your next move is. So, with that being said, there is something I want to kind of advertise that is coming up soon. I am a little biased because I am hosting it with Tracy Rath as well as Bob Hartman, and that is an event that we have curated for July 26th, which is a Sunday. It'll be in the evening from 5:30 to 7, and the title is called Raising Kids to Flourish in a Screen-Filled World. And this is a parent equipping class that it just kind of happened. Bob had the idea. He roped in me and Tracy. We want to disclaim we do not have magic wands that we are giving out. We do not have all the answers to all your parenting questions. But we figured using our mental health expertise, our philosophy expertise, and then the fact that all three of us are Jesus followers and parents, that we could put all of that brain power together as a resource for you as a parent. So the class is intended to be more of a conversation. It is not going to be a typical, we teach you everything and you just sit there. It'll be a lot of asking questions, us prompting questions, thinking about how screens affect our kids and teens. So this is intended to be a parent-only class. So we would encourage you as the adult, the parent, to attend the class. We will have childcare available all the way up to about 5th grade. So if you could RSVP if you are interested by using the QR code on that seat back in front of you, we would really appreciate it so we know how much childcare to provide. But ultimately, if you have any questions, if you want to know more, pull myself aside, pull Bob aside, Tracy aside. We would be happy to talk about it. We're really excited to have this resource for you guys. And then last but not least, something we talk about every week because it is a core part of who we are as Movement and who we are as a church is generosity. Jesus' ministry was based around the fact of serving others, giving. And so here at Movement, we believe that we also put this at the front of what we do. So if you're interested in contributing in any way to Movement, we have our boxes once again at the back of the auditorium and in the lobby if you're wanting to give financially. Also, your move cards, I'm going to loop back around to that. It would be great if you wanted to fill one of those out and find a way to get plugged in. Just like I said, that event that happened yesterday, our block party, would not have been possible without generosity. All the types of generosity. So we thank you guys for that, for those of you who do give regularly, whether it's your time, your talents, your money. We are so grateful for the different ways you are generous. And with that, we are going to go ahead and start our worship service. If you want to stand, we're doing a little bit of an unplugged type service today. I saw Satan fall like lightning. I saw darkness run for cover. But the miracle that I just can't get over, my name is registered in heaven. I believe in signs and wonders. I have resurrection power. Oh yes, I do. Till the miracle that I just can't get over, my name is registered in heaven. My praise belongs to you forever. This is my testimony from death to life. 'Cause grace rewrote my story. I'll testify about Jesus Christ the righteous. I'm justified. This is my testimony. This is my testimony. Together, sons and daughters, bought with blood and washed in water. Sing the praises of the Spirit, Son and Father. Our God will finish what He started. Our God will finish what He started. This is my testimony from death to life. 'Cause grace rewrote my story. I'll testify about Jesus Christ the righteous. I'm justified. This is my testimony. This is my testimony. If I'm not dead, you're not done. Greater things still to come. Oh, I believe. If I'm not dead, you're not done. Greater things still to come. Oh, I believe. If I'm not dead, then you're not done. Greater things still to come. Oh, I believe. If I'm not dead, then you're not done. Greater things are still to come. Oh, I believe. This is my testimony from death to life. 'Cause grace rewrote my story. I'll testify about Jesus Christ the righteous. I'm justified. This is my testimony. Oh, I'm alive. This is my testimony from death to life. 'Cause grace rewrote my story. I'll testify about Jesus Christ the righteous. I'm justified. This is my testimony. This is my testimony. As we head into this second song, as I noted before, we're kind of a more unplugged worship set list today. And I wanted to point to the fact that there is intentionality behind that. This is a big weekend full of energy, lots of loud noises, lots of loudness going on. But we truly wanted to utilize this worship service today to boil it back down to what matters. And what matters is the fact that we are a church of people lifting our voices to worship God. So as we sing Holy Forever, I encourage you to really listen to those lyrics and focus on the fact that we are here to worship together, and we are lifting our voices to this amazing God that we serve.
Thousand generations falling down in worship to sing the song of ages to the Lamb. And all who've gone before us and all who will believe, we sing the song of ages to the Lamb. Your name is the highest, your name is the greatest, your name stands above them all thrones and dominions, all powers and positions, your name stands above them all, and the angels cry, holy, all creation cries, holy, you are lifted high, holy, holy forever. And if you've been forgiven, and if you've been redeemed, sing the song forever to the Lamb. And if you walk in freedom, and if you bear His name, sing the song forever to the Lamb. Sing the song forever and amen. The angels cry, holy, all creation cries, holy, you are lifted high, holy, holy forever. Hear your people sing, holy to the King of Kings, holy, you will always be, holy, holy forever. And the angels cry, holy, all creation cries, holy, you are lifted high, holy, holy forever. Hear your people sing, holy to the King of Kings, holy, you will always be, holy, holy forever. You will always be, holy, holy forever.
And with that, I encourage you guys to go ahead and greet someone around you as we move into the remainder of our service today.
Good morning, 4th of July weekend. Welcome to Movement. Yeah, sorry, I didn't give you a chance. Good morning. You know, that was mean. I said that and didn't give you a chance to respond to that one. So it's good to be here today. You can tell from the bumper that we're in the midst of a series on the book of Daniel. And so Daniel is a great story, and you can tell from the picture there that the Daniel in the lion's den, who doesn't think of that? And even there's a movie coming this fall that is focused on the story of Daniel, tells some of these stories. So Daniel in the lion's den is a great familiar story. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, as Pastor Nathan a few weeks ago talked about the fiery furnace. And so that was a great story, the lion's den, the fiery furnace. And today in chapter 5, also equally known, is the story of the floating fingers. Right? Everybody knows the story of the, growing up in church and with children's, sermons and whatever, children's Sunday school. And I remember pictures of like the hand. You talk about, you get into the story, we'll see more, the creepy, who would tell a child? I realize it's in the Bible, so it's good. But this is one of we get on our kids sometimes because the word crazy is used for describing things. And could you use a different word? But let me just say that this story we're going to talk about today is crazy. And so we're going to be talking a little bit more of the story of Daniel. And so Daniel in the Bible is one of many that are considered to be the major prophets. So names like Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel are the major prophets, not because their word is more important or because they're major in the sense of they're somehow professional. We think major leagues and No, we don't think about it that way. Just their books are bigger. So whenever we think about the four major prophets that I just mentioned, and then there's a series of minor prophets in the Bible as well, names like Amos and Hosea, Malachi, they have shorter books. So they're called often minor prophets, and so they don't have quite as much to say, but the words that they're saying are of equal importance for those that, like Daniel, who'd be considered the major prophets. And so as we think about this idea of prophecy, and we think about who Daniel is and the role that he plays, this series, if you've been part of Movement through the summer, hopefully you've been invited in and you're reading Daniel, some of those great stories again, Lion's Den, Fiery Furnace, the one we'll talk about today, and some others. And then in the latter part of the book, there's some prophecy that gets a little bit more confusing. But it's worth just pausing for a moment, since we're spending a big chunk of the summer thinking about Daniel as a prophet, just thinking about what that even means, to use that word. And so Daniel, as a book, along with the others, they all were writing within a 300-year period. And so from about 760 BC to about 460 BC, so that's about 500 to 800 years before Jesus was around on earth, that these prophets, and it's a really contentious time in the life of Israel. There's wars, there's civil war, there's invasion, there's exile, and we'll get into some of that when we take a look at Daniel today. And so this idea of prophecy, I always think about it, and just in researching a few years ago, came across, it was a great illustration. And we think about it, we're parents, and we think about this idea that if you've ever been around kids, or if you're a parent, or if you're a kid, right? Sometimes there are these moments in which somebody says, look, I'm going to try to predict for you what the future is going to look like. I'm going to tell you, if you do this, this is going to happen. And when that happens, I'm not going to say I told you so, but I'm kind of going to tell you I told you so. And so that's not always a good parenting technique. But you can have the foresight. And so we think about that. And so it's not going to be on the slide here, but just going to read for a moment from Deuteronomy chapter 4, because Moses was the first prophet. And so as Moses is telling the people of Israel what's going to happen in their future, this is Moses essentially saying, look, I'm going to stand here and I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. And when it happens, the best that we can do, and so these are the role the prophets will play, is really almost sympathetic, saying, we tried to tell you. And part of the story of Daniel and the other prophets, we tried to tell you. So Deuteronomy chapter 4, in picking up with verse 25, Moses says to the Israelites, after you have had children and grandchildren and have lived in the land a long time, these are Israelites getting ready to move into the promised land. If you then become corrupt and make any kind of idol, doing evil in the eyes of the Lord, your God and arousing his anger, I call the heavens and the earth as witnesses against you this day, that you will quickly perish from the land that you are crossing the Jordan to possess. And he's saying, look, things are great. We're headed to this new land. I just want to give you a little bit of a word of warning. You know, those people you hang out with, they're bad news. Eventually something's going to happen. And when it does, sometimes it's really hard to be sympathetic because you just want to say, I tried to tell you. I tried to tell you that this was going to happen. Moses continues, you will not live there long, but will certainly be destroyed. The Lord will scatter you among the peoples, and only a few of you will survive among the nations to which the Lord will drive you. And he's telling them, so we get into Daniel in a few moments here. Israelites have been put into exile. They did these very things generations later. They were put into exile, and they're coming back to their homeland. Verse 28, there you will worship man-made gods of wood and stone, which cannot see or hear or eat or smell. But if from there you seek the Lord your God, you will find him if you seek him with all your heart and with all your soul. Moses is saying, look, things are good now. We're heading into the promised land. You're going to make some bad decisions. But if you seek God, he is still there. When you are in distress and all these things have happened to you, then in later days you will return to the Lord your God and obey him. For the Lord your God is a merciful God. He will not abandon or destroy you or forget the covenant with your ancestors, which he confirmed to them by oath. The Lord your God is a merciful God. Now, we're going to read a story in a few moments in which there's some judgment that takes place. And the judgment isn't necessarily positive for those who receive it, but the fact that God doesn't stay silent. One of the worst things you can do in a family, in a workplace, on a team, is if there's someone who's frustrating, it's actually still engaging them to give them negative feedback, but when you go silent, it's one of the cruelest things you can do to another human being. And what Moses is saying here, for the Lord your God's a merciful God, he will not abandon you or forget the covenant with your ancestors. And so that's the foundation that happened generations again before Moses sets the foundation. Before we get into the book of Daniel, and we're going to turn there now, we're looking at chapter 5. And again, this follows a variety of stories, the fiery furnace. It's right before the story of the lion's den. And so the story, if you've ever used the phrase, the writings on the wall, that phrase comes from this story in Daniel that we're going to take a look at in chapter 5. So if you've ever said, and usually it's said with an ominous tone, well, the writing's on the wall, and then it's because when you see what Daniel actually, or what is written in this chapter, you can see why it's somewhat ominous. So let's go ahead and jump in and see what's happening in this chapter. Well, first of all, they've got a party going on. And so in chapter 3, so starting with chapter 5, verse 3, so they brought in the gold goblets that had been taken from the temple of God in Jerusalem, and the king and his nobles, his wives and his concubines drank from them. As they drank the wine, they praised the gods of gold and silver, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone. So it's a holiday weekend. People like parties. Anyone here have a special set of silverware or a special fancy that you break out for whenever some people come to a party? You know, and the shy. Or you know, when you think of like that, oh, your sister's kids are coming. We're going to get the fancy paper plates for them. You know, like we're going to get the fancy cheap napkins for them. But we're familiar. Or you know, if you have the nice china, when the queen comes, we're going to break out the nice china. So some people still have that really fancy, and you never use it. It's just tucked away, or you have the family members that you break out the special paper plates, or maybe those like Sam's Club hard plastic. They're right below the real things, but they make you look fancy even though it's a picnic. But that's what's happening in this passage as they're taking a look. They brought in the gold goblets that had been taken from the temple of God in Jerusalem. The whole crew that was there, it was a party, and they were using all these utensils and the goblets that were taken from the temple, and they were using them. So we look at that and think, well, that's pretty typical. We have stuff that you break out for this crew. You don't always use the other stuff for everyone else, but it moves very quickly from a party to judgment. Now, we're jumping in the story several verses later. We're jumping about 18 verses. Daniel enters and says, "But you have not humbled yourself. Instead, you have set yourself up against the Lord of heaven. You had the goblets from his temple brought to you, and you and your nobles, your wives and your concubines, drink wine from them. You praise the gods of silver and gold, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone, which cannot see or hear or understand, but you did not honor the God who holds in his hands your life and all your ways." And it goes very quickly from a party atmosphere to an atmosphere of judgment. And even looking a little bit further ahead, the judgment that comes, it's a series of words at the end of chapter 5, and the judgment that comes actually leads to the ruler's death, even that very day. And so they move from party to judgment quickly. So how did this happen? So we're in chapter 5, and we're taking a look. They have this party atmosphere. They have judgment. It leads to someone's death. So how did this happen? Well, I skipped a very important detail to jump into the story of the party. And when you take a look at chapter 5, verse 1, it begins with King Belshazzar gave a great banquet for 1,000 of his nobles and drank wine with them, and the story continues. King Belshazzar. If you've been paying attention the last few weeks, or if you're familiar at all with the book of Daniel, this is the first appearance of King Belshazzar. First 4 chapters, it was King Nebuchadnezzar. Nathan's been talking about Nebuchadnezzar and his rule within Babylon, and so we shift from Nebuchadnezzar to King Belshazzar. It's his first appearance, or about 30 to 40 years between Nebuchadnezzar and Belshazzar, and the NIV and other translations of the Bible will even say your father. And Nebuchadnezzar wasn't the biological father of King Belshazzar. It was just, he was an ancestor. And so there's a lineage, several generations of kings fell in between them. So they're not just a father and a son taking over. But here's the thing, that part of the reason the judgment comes is that it's a different king, but it's the same sin. It's a different king. The king has changed. It's no longer Nebuchadnezzar. It's Belshazzar. Different king, but the same sin. And notice that part of the judgment is this complete lack of humility. You did not honor the God who holds in his hands your life and all your ways. You have not humbled yourself. The same accusations, the same judgment that God brought toward Nebuchadnezzar, he's now bringing toward Belshazzar. Which is even more frustrating, because if you look at the end of chapter 4, right before this, now I, Nebuchadnezzar, so this is right before what we're reading about in chapter 5, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and exalt and glorify the King of heaven, because everything he does is right and all his ways are just, and those who walk in pride he is able to humble. Even at the end of Nebuchadnezzar's life, he's recognizing that he has been humbled in front of God, humbled before God. And that lesson has been lost. Now, we're not going to get into a great detail. It is a holiday weekend. We're celebrating our 250th anniversary of our nation. And so there are political parallels all through this. We're just going to make a couple for further reflection and thought. But it is interesting that sometimes the system, what Daniel's really helping us understand, the system has issues, even when we swap out leaders at local or state or national or some international stages. Sometimes it doesn't matter who the ruler is. Sometimes there are just systems that aren't designed and aren't God-honoring. Different king, same sin is part of the reason that this judgment occurs. So as we go on in the story, suddenly the fingers of a human hand appeared, and wrote on the plaster of the wall. So they're having their party. They're using the goblets from the temple. They're having a great time. Thousands of people potentially are there. And it doesn't even say that a human hand appears. It's not even like but just the fingers. And whether the finger was writing, whether the fingers were holding a utensil, it's creepy regardless. Again, why this would be part of children's curriculum and in Sunday school, and it's a good story to know because it's in the Bible, but there is a creepiness about this. Imagine, I don't know about you, and you might have been drinking too much from the goblets if this is you, but if you've ever had an experience like this, let somebody know because we'd be interested. But this isn't something, I've never been to a party where a disembodied hand shows up and starts writing on the wall. And so you can imagine what happens here. People are a little stressed out by it. So immediately what happens is that you can jump down in verse 7, the king summoned the enchanters, astrologers, and diviners. So hey, if something's happening here, we've got to get in the experts. Well, that's interesting, because that follows a similar pattern to what Nebuchadnezzar did in some of the earlier chapters. That when something happened that was beyond understanding, Nebuchadnezzar had a dream and nobody knew how to, he didn't know what it meant, so he brought in the same group of people, the enchanters, the astrologers, different king, same sin. Another interesting part, jumping down to verse 10, is as the queen is listening to all of this going on, and she would have been there likely to see the handwriting, to hear the people saying, what are we going to do about it? And so she hears that the king summoned the enchanters, astrologers, and diviners, and they don't know what's going on. Nobody really knows what's going on. And the queen says, there actually is somebody who might be able. There is a man in your kingdom, in verse 11, who has the spirit of the holy gods in him. And she goes on then to say there's actually somebody here who's done this before and might be able to help. And so Daniel now enters the story. So enter Daniel into the story. Daniel was found to have a keen mind and knowledge and understanding, and also the ability to interpret dreams, explain riddles, and solve difficult problems. Daniel is able to solve difficult problems, interpret dreams, and he has a keen mind and knowledge and understanding. He's able to do the things that the king is looking for. When we get into a story or passage like this, sometimes it's challenging to think, what on earth? Wouldn't it just be easier to skip a story like this? Clearly, it means something, but sometimes then we go to and think, okay, well then what does this mean for me? I'm probably not going to be at a party where a hand shows up. Yeah, we might get the fancy silverware out but I really don't know how this necessarily applies to me. And so as working through this passage and thinking about it's a 4th of July weekend, it's a moment in which anytime we have things that are associated with the moment, they come to mind. So it was 6 years ago, it was July 3rd, 2020, that my sister called. I have 2 older sisters. My oldest sister called and said that my mom died on July 3rd, 2020. And it wasn't many months later until our dad then also died. And in that moment, so I think about July 4th weekend, and it'll forever likely be connected with that phone call. And I remember at some point in the process of just going through their things, there was a house to sell. They're in Southwest Pennsylvania. And I remember somewhere along that experience, somebody was able to share with me something that was incredibly helpful. And they said, you've got one last chance as you're going through your parents' things to really think about what you can learn about them. You've got their house, you've got their photos, you've got things that are likely some will be kept, some will be thrown out, some will be donated, some things you just disappear and you don't know what happened. But we have a tendency, especially in families, that if we're not intentional about it, we'll find ourselves in those moments always thinking, oh, I found this picture I wonder if that's the reason I dress that way or act that way. We find stories and we make everything very quickly in those moments about us. And that advice was just really helpful to say, hey, you have the rest of your life to think about why you are the way you are. Don't use the time in your parents' house one last time to make it about you. And that was incredibly helpful advice at that point. And I think it's also helpful advice whenever we come to a passage of scripture like this that our impulse is to make it about us. Well, what is it about this story of Daniel that what does it mean for me? What does it say to me? And I think a better question, just like that idea, what can I learn about my parents? A better question is thinking about what can we learn about God from this story? What can we learn about God from this story? Now, there are a variety of things. I think one of the first things we can take is that all nations are accountable to his plan. It's interesting that King Belshazzar was king of Babylon. It was a nation, it was not Daniel's home country. It was not Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego's home country. The Israelites were brought there. They were in exile from their homeland. And they were going to return to their homeland, but in this moment, they weren't in their home place. And yet, what's interesting, the judgment that is provided to this nation was a judgment that they were out of step with God's plan. It's the 4th of July weekend, and I was in a conversation earlier this week, and somebody really, they were baiting the conversation. Is the United States a Christian nation? I'll be honest, I'm not particularly that interested in that question because what Daniel teaches us is that it doesn't matter the answer to that question, yes or no, but there is a standard. Mike Tomlin, the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, had a statement, the standard is the standard. God's standard is the standard, whether we would say that we're abiding by it, intending to or not. The Babylonians were not a country, was not an empire founded on following God's plans and desire, and yet what we see from this, what we learn about God is that his expectation is we are held accountable to his plan, whether we would say that we're trying to follow it or not. And even the Babylonian nation, the empire, the Babylonian empire was still accountable to God's plan. All nations are accountable to God's plan, whether they intend to follow it or not. I think another thing that we learn about God from this is that he's true to his word. Back to what I read earlier from Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 31, for the Lord your God's a merciful God. The fact that God shows up to reveal himself in the action of this handwriting, that God's providing judgment. Now, it's not a helpful judgment for the king. The king dies. You can read the rest of the chapter. The king dies later that night. By the next chapter, it's a whole different king, a whole different empire that's in place by chapter 6. But it's still a case of God isn't silent. For the Lord your God is a merciful God. He will not abandon or destroy you. Even when things are shifting, God hasn't abandoned or destroyed them. And there are moments we can feel similar, that the world changes rapidly, life changes rapidly. But what we learn about God from this passage is that while nations are accountable to his plan, we as followers of Jesus, we have people who are gathered together on this day are not abandoned by God. That his presence is with us. He is a merciful God, and we have not been forgotten. I think a second thing as we take a look at this that's really fascinating is the question, why was Daniel invited into the story? Why was Daniel invited into the story? And from the words of the queen, we can see there was evidence of his ability. Daniel was invited into the story because, now, it's in a book that has his name, so you probably at some point Daniel's going to show up. But it wouldn't be in the book of Daniel if he wasn't at some point invited into the story. And he was invited into the story because there was evidence of his ability. The church collective, not just Movement Church, but churches in general, we're always at risk for over-inspiring people but under-equipping them. Meaning, things that happen on this stage in churches like Movement and others, the pulpits, the podiums, wherever at times, they can be really inspirational. And we can get caught up in the moment, and you feel the Spirit of God working, and then you walk out the door, you eat lunch at home or somewhere else, you get to the rest of your day, and you start to look at what your schedule looks like. For churches that meet on a Sunday, you look at your schedule on a Monday, and very quickly you realize, partly because you're not even thinking about it, but even if you do think about it, I want to live out what we talked about. I was so inspired. I don't really know what I should be doing with what it was we were just talking about. And we risk over-inspiring and under-equipping. So I want to think about that question, that idea, why was Daniel invited into the story? And what does that have for us? What can we be learning and thinking about from that? So Leslie Newbigin was a missionary to India for decades. And he's from Europe, and he died several years ago. But he wrote a variety of books that were helping people make sense of being followers of Jesus, in what he called a pluralistic, which is just a fancy way in his writing to say people don't agree with each other. People have different views, people disagree, not just about things of life, but about we argue about sports teams, we argue about political philosophies and approaches to solving issues. We don't have agreement about religion, and so we live in a world where there's disagreement. And so he wrote a book called The Gospel in a Pluralist Society, and Newbigin had this to say that I think helps connect to this idea why Daniel was invited into the story and what that has for us. Newbigin said, what really needs to be said is that where the church is faithful to its Lord, there the powers of the kingdom are present, and people begin to ask the question to which the gospel is the answer. What really needs to be said is that where the church is faithful to its Lord, meaning churches can exist and not be faithful to their Lord. Simply gathering in a place like this doesn't accomplish much of anything if it's not faithful to what God intended. Newbigin continues, church is faithful to its Lord, there the powers of the kingdom are present. If we're faithful, the powers of the kingdom are present, meaning the work of the Spirit, following God's direction, following the example of Jesus and becoming more like that. And when that happens, people begin to ask the question to which the gospel is the answer. When we live lives that are faithful to God's teaching, and we live lives that follow in the example of Jesus, people begin to ask the question to which the gospel is the answer. And the gospel in this context, we can think about it simply being the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. So what does he mean by that? What does it mean to say that people begin to ask the question to which the gospel is the answer? So let's try to make this and think through this. Just, again, we're thinking about the idea. Daniel was invited into the story. Daniel was invited into the story because there was evidence of his faithfulness. And Newbigin tells us if we're faithful, people will begin to ask questions to which the gospel is the answer. So let's think together for a few moments. All of us live somewhere. Some of us have yards that we're able to tend and care for, others of us don't. But let's imagine for a moment that somebody lives in a place, you live in a place where you have a yard, and that your yard just kind of runs up to your neighbor's yard. You don't have a fence, and you always have that question if you've ever moved or you live in a house like that, well, how far should you mow? You ever have those moments, and the first time somebody mows, you have this foot between your grass, that they didn't mow it, we didn't mow it, well, apparently that's ours. You know, you try to figure that out. So these are just real day-to-day kind of things. And let's imagine that this house lives next to somebody who fertilizes 3 times a day and twice on a Saturday in addition to that just because they want their grass to be greener than green. Now, we all know, if you're local to Findlay or if you look back 15 years or so, we know from the University of Findlay, if you put the wrong thing in the fertilizer, it actually can kill your grass. I can tell some of you know what I'm talking about. And for those of you that don't, it's worth looking it up. Award-winning, it just wasn't a pretty thing. So let's imagine that in the exuberance of your neighbor to fertilize their grass, they fertilize it, they don't do it the right way, and about 5 feet into your yard, your grass is dead. Now, those of you that really landscape and care for things, you're already bristling at the example and already thinking about what that would be like. And that's exactly the point. So let's imagine, because your neighbor knows that they messed it up. Your neighbor knows that they're causing you extreme grief, and understandably so, and they're expecting that when you come to them, you're going to tell them exactly what you think. Imagine that you walk up to them and you don't do that. You have a conversation with them. You can't ignore what happened. Grass grows back. It's like a bad haircut. Grass grows back. It was a mistake. You didn't do it on purpose. And they look at you, and here's the key point for this passage and what we're talking about. They look at you and they say, how can you respond like that? I know if this was me and this happened in reverse, I can tell you what I'd be. So tell me. No. The reason, if it's sincere, that you can respond differently is because of the gospel of Jesus. We have a standard that is different than the standard that gets angry over 5 feet of burnt grass. And by responding in the way that you respond, it gives you the opportunity to have a conversation about why you're different. Imagine you're in a workplace, and imagine a workplace that has promotions that are available. And imagine that you have a coworker, stepping out of this for a moment. I'm a Pittsburgh Pirates baseball fan. They just announced all-star team players. Paul Skeens, who's a pitcher, is on the Pirates, is the all-star, one all-star representative. Skeens is not the best player this year on the Pirates team. He should not be the all-star. And so you can imagine these conversations happening. There are other players on the team that are more deserving. I don't know why he is. Fortunately, he has some humility about it, but we see these things play out. But imagine that you have a workplace where you're up for a promotion, you're given full consideration, and you and the other person know full well who deserves it, and they get the promotion even though you know you deserve it. Some of you live these examples. And there's everything about what's going on that you want to respond in a certain way. And it might take a couple of days. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to have the range of human emotions that come with that. That's healthy as a response. But you find the courage and the ability within a few days to walk up to the person sincerely and say, congratulations. And they look at you and they say, what? Look, come here. You know as much as I do that you deserve this. And I know. But you got it. Congratulations. Are you serious? Yeah. How are you serious? How can you be like this? If it was me, well, let me tell you why. Daniel was invited in to the story in Daniel chapter 5 because there was evidence of how he acted previously. In this case, it was interpreting dreams and providing wise counsel. And if someone looked at him and said, and this is part of, he's saying, look, don't reward me, reward God. God is the one that provides the insight. This is just, I'm his spokesperson. So Daniel deflects, and even as a further example, he deflects the credit. He doesn't take credit. Because if someone looks and says, how are you like this? Well, because I'm awesome. Kind of undermines the whole point. Because it's not your strength that enabled you to do that. And you can think about places we work, places we live, places we spend our free time, but there are ample opportunities to provide people with reasons to ask us the question about why we work and function the way we do when we're living according to God's kingdom principles. So as we pull some of these things together from Daniel chapter 5, the first thing that's worth remembering is we should be like Daniel. Daniel provides an example of somebody with the character, with the practices, with the heart. He's not perfect, but he desires to follow God faithfully in the midst of a culture. The leader keeps changing. It's a different king, but the same sin. He's far from his people. Their names have been changed. He's with a small group of friends, but their diet's been changed. All these different things. But we can be like Daniel. And so, two specific things that we can remember from chapter 5. One, trusting God's presence in changing circumstances. The same God that's active in the book of Daniel is active today. Different king, same sin, but it's the same God, same faithfulness, same presence. Trust in God's presence in changing circumstances. And second, be faithful and ready to answer why. Whenever you're faithful to God's presence and you respond to a neighbor, to a coworker, to somebody at Walmart or Kohl's, wherever it is you go, that the line's taken an exceptionally long time. Why aren't you frustrated? Because this isn't my priority. It may be your priority then in that moment, but you have bigger kingdom priorities that permit you to respond differently, and that invites a conversation. Why are you like this? Be faithful and ready to answer why. Let's pray together. Father, thank you for the gift of your word. Thank you for giving us examples like Daniel, who model for us what it's like to be faithful to your presence in the midst of uncertainty and changing circumstances. Father, allow us to live it out in our homes, in our workplaces, in our communities. Father, we pray that you give us the courage to be representatives of Jesus to others. We pray this in your holy name. Amen.
We invite you to go ahead and stand as we continue to worship in our service.
let your word take root, and the fruit be planted. You are the vine, our only life. Let the good news grow, and the branches flourish. You are the vine, our only life. Rain down, heaven come and cover this earth. Fall on good ground, good ground. We don't want to waste your word. Come on, rain down, heaven come and cover this earth. Fall on good ground, good ground. We don't want to waste your word. When your truth is hard to believe in, let our hearts be soft for receiving. Fall on good ground, good ground. Make us good ground, good ground.
As we finish up our worship service today, we're going to sing a song called Look to the Sun. It's one you may be familiar with, or maybe you're just learning, but we wanted to end the service with some higher energy and focusing on the true reason we are here, which is Jesus. So let's sing together.